Hey, Gothamites, you are listening to the Arkham Sessions. This is the only podcast that analyzes every episode of Batman the Animated Series from the perspective of a clinical psychologist. That clinical psychologist is sitting right in front of me right now. That is Dr. Andrea Letamendi. Hello, Drea.
Hi, Brian. How are you?
I am doing really well. And I'm happy to be back, and I'm especially happy to be talking about Harley's Holiday today. But before we do that, we should talk a little bit about our community over at IMSI. People who were kind enough to go and join our community not too long ago, which, by the way, they still can if they want. They can go to imzy.com, imzy.com/Arkham. Those people who did before have started getting their t-shirts, their Arkham Sessions t-shirts, and frankly, they look awesome.
They look amazing.
People from France, people from Ireland. Bernard, we're looking at you. Were tweeting us and emailing us and sending us photos of them wearing their shirts at various conventions around the world, and we want to thank you guys. We love the fact that those shirts are out there.
It is pretty cool. And so if you still haven't sent us a photo, please send us a photo on Twitter or Facebook or on IMSI. And actually, somebody had posted a video, like an unboxing video of their Arkham Sessions t-shirt, which was pretty amazing to watch. I didn't see that. It's basically a promo for our show because it's a nice description of what we do and who the characters are. And it's great. You can see it right now on imzy.com/Arkham.
Nice. So thank you. Drea, this is probably one of, if not the most requested episode since the beginning of the Arkham Sessions.
We get more questions about Harley than any other character overall. So yes, this is an episode that I think not only is incredibly popular, like people remember this episode, but also I think it brings up a lot of questions about Harley that are a little bit unanswered, that shed light to her personality, to her recovery and mental health status. So like it's a really well written and pretty fascinating episode. So I think it piques people's interest.
Well, my interest is certainly piqued because, frankly, to be perfectly honest, I'm not entirely sure I know what to think about this episode. I'm so conflicted because
that's rare. Usually you know exactly what your stance is.
And on one hand, I do know what my stance is, but then I look at the other hand and it turns out I have another stance. It is for starters, it's written by Paul Dini. So you know it's going to be a fantastic episode. You know it's going to look at something different than maybe anything we've seen in the last 80 episodes of the show. But the thing that I found interesting about it is that it's not necessarily consistent with all the characters that we've seen in the past. For instance, you and I have talked at great length about how the very first instinct Batman has is to not trust you and to almost even push you back into crime because that's where you belong and he needs to beat you up and, you know, and all that. We saw him do it with Penguin. We saw him do it with Poison Ivy. We saw him do it with the Riddler. We saw him do it with well, I guess he didn't really do it with Two-Face. He didn't do it with Harvey. He was on Harvey's side, but that's because it was Harvey. Let's talk about this episode. This is very important. So we open up, and Harley is ecstatic. She is off the wall, and she's not wearing her Harley Quinn outfit. The very classic red and white Jester jumpsuit. Right. Which automatically lets you know that something is different about her. And we find out that she is being basically she's being given parole. I mean, they rubber stamp a document that says that Harley is sane.
You've made wonderful progress, Harley. You've passed your competency hearing, and tomorrow you'll be released mentally sane and sound.
Whee! Wahoo! Whoopee! Yay! Yay! Yay!
Which, by the way, I have to wonder, do they come up to you the day before you're going to be released?
Oh, yeah. It's in 24 hours. You're like, you're fine. You're going to go tomorrow.
Hey, turns out you're sane.
There's absolutely no red tape involved.
No.
You just go.
I want to know, Drea, about this rubber stamp. I want to know about that document that they basically give to Harley as if it is a letter of recommendation, like keep this on you at all times in case somebody... in case
right,
someone,
unless if you get
asks
questioned. Well, so it's a 1-page. It looks like a certificate. Mm-hmm. It basically it's not even a document. It's kind of just like a certificate with her name and then a giant stamp that says sane. On it.
In big red letters. I mean, like, sane.
And she's ecstatic. Yeah. This is like the best thing that could happen to her. She's proud of herself. She's giddy. She's ready to be out of there and to be free again. So it's an important, pivotal moment for her. But no, I mean, I think I'm even trying to understand like what this would symbolize, what it would normally look like. Mm-hmm. Of course, there's no stamp that says sane. I mean, does that mean there's a stamp that says insane?
Insane. It's a stamp that simply says nope.
No. Yeah. Not today, not tomorrow.
Yeah, it's not happening tomorrow, just so you know. Well, and on the flip side of that, let's talk about, like, right after this meeting, Batman and Robin are escorting Scarecrow past this gang, and Scarecrow, you know, the juxtaposition between Scarecrow and Harley very clearly seems like she's got it together. Meanwhile, Scarecrow is a raving lunatic.
There's this very clear distinction between his behavior and her behavior, and there's, I think, the assumption that she was once where he was. Mm-hmm. I mean, everyone was. I mean, they go in and out of there frequently, so they've all had that moment. But she's looking at him like, that's not going to be me again. Yeah. I've recovered. There's this real sense of, I've got my stamped certificate of sanity and I'm going to be released.
Yeah. And I want to talk about the exchange that she has with Batman here.
I hear you're getting out tomorrow.
You got a problem with that?
Congratulations.
Yeah, so I made a few mistakes. I've got my head back together and I'm gonna live my life right.
Batman sort of congratulates Harley and makes it clear that he'll be watching. He shakes her hand and then holds it. And it's a very intimidating, like, instantly I recognized that as, well, that's Batman. He's already started. She's not even left the facility yet, and he's already started intimidating her, letting her know, I'm always going to be watching you. You're never going to be able to go anywhere without me seeing you. And the moment you do anything that is bad or wicked in any way, you're going to be right back here. That, to me, seems consistent. However, afterward, we cut to presumably, what would you say, it's like the next day?
It seems like the same day.
Well, it can't be the same day because it's daytime and Batman.
Oh, wait, it's
Batman,
the next day.
Yeah,
because they told her you'd be out the next day.
Right. So it's like the next day, Harley is out shopping. And I got to tell you, this is a scene that really tugged at my heartstrings, which is something that doesn't happen very often. I was rooting for Harley because she's found a nice dress, and she almost puts her persona into this dress. Like, this dress is what's going to define her as someone on the up and up, someone who has left her criminal life behind her.
I feel like we have to mention Veronica too.
Well, we absolutely will mention Veronica because I want to talk about her, but let's Harley's.
Okay, I say that because this is Veronica Vreeland, right?
Right.
So Veronica Vreeland is the, very rich socialite, well-to-do woman who Harley sees with Batman.
Right. But let's talk about Harley.
I know, because Harley decides to go buy a dress.
Right.
And I think this is her wanting to be, she even says, I just want to live a normal life. I think that I think that was deliberate. I think that's her wanting to be more like someone like Veronica. Nice dress, a normal life, a normal job. I want to fit into society.
But that's not. But that's not Veronica. Veronica doesn't live a normal life. She is.
But
she
Harley
is
doesn't know that.
Oh, she knows it. She knows it because not only has she robbed Veronica Vreeland in the past, like she has targeted her. She has aimed a gun in her face. She is like she knows Veronica Vreeland is of the elite.
She has.
Harley wants to blend in. Harley wants to be normal. She picks a very even the dress she picks is very humble. Like it's not a ball gown. She's not going for an elite look. It's almost like sundressy. Like it's a very cute. This is me now. This is like what my personality is going to be.
I think all I'm saying is I agree with you that she wants to live a normal life and blend in and buy a dress that's sort of like a typical woman's outfit. I don't know. There was something kind of Pretty Woman about that. Like I'm going to go into a store and pick the dress that I want to wear and just, you know, not be questioned,
sure,
not be rudely treated, not be, I just want to kind of do a normal thing.
I don't disagree with you. I think you are right.
And right before that, we should mention that she's walking down the street. No, she's roller skating down the street with her hyenas, and she's just oblivious to the folks around her, and she's kind of dressed in like a summer outfit, but not very nicely dressed. I mean, it's a bit revealing, but it's a scene, and people are gawking at her and pointing and moving out of the way, probably because she has these wild
two rabid hyenas, and she's wearing short shorts, and her shirt is like a button-down shirt that's tied in the knot in the front, and she's got the two side ponytails. You know, it's very adorable, except for the fact that she's got two. Yeah. It's
an interesting scene, and when she realizes that people are reacting to her, she interprets that as their response to her outfit.
I knew I shouldn't have worn this outfit. It's so out of style, it's growing mold. I probably look like a total geek.
Right. So she doesn't, I mean, it's just weird. She doesn't have the insight that what they're reacting to is the dangerous person. She looks like a dangerous person. She has these wild dogs out there, but her interpretation is, oh, I need to dress nicer. I need to, they're reacting to my outfit.
I just had a thought. You just brought up an interesting point. If you took the hyenas away, Harley wouldn't look dangerous. But because she's got the hyenas with her, she is perceived as dangerous, much like Harley has a tendency to surround herself with dangerous people, whereas Harley might not necessarily be as dangerous without those dangerous people, i.e. the Joker.
I think that her identity is, I think it comes to her lack of insight. She sees herself one way, and she does not realize that she puts herself out there a different way. That she's not realizing that she looks dangerous to people. And so her solution is, I need to change my clothes. I mean, she's so defined by what she wears. When she's in her jester outfit, she is her most dangerous self. She's unpredictable. She's violent. She uses weapons, you know, like that is her villain persona.
But she's not as violent as, say, the Joker, who might use a real gun. Harley is the type that will use a like a cork pistol.
Oh, she's used a bazooka.
Right, but she didn't kill the people in the car that she shot the bazooka. Like, you know, I don't think Harley is as violent as those she surrounds herself with, but I understand what you mean.
I agree that she may not be as violent as someone like the Joker, but she is defined by what her clothes, what her outfit is. And so when she decides to purchase, I mean, this goes back to your comment about the dress. Her idea is, I'm going to buy a pretty but simple feminine outfit like a dress so that people will treat me like a normal person.
Right. And that's when she sees Bruce Wayne and Veronica.
Hey, remember me? That big charity bash a few years back? The one the Joker robbed? I was the clown girl holding the gun on ya!
So Drea, now I want to talk about Veronica. I want to say, okay, Bruce Wayne is hanging out with Veronica Vreeland. They're like shopping for clothes, you know, whatever. This isn't a date, is it? Like why is Bruce Wayne hanging out with someone that he knows is an awful human being?
I don't know. I do think it's a date, though.
It's kind of weird.
Why would you go shopping with a male person?
I don't.
And they're like picking out.
I don't.
And she's putting, like, she's picked out a suit for him. It's very date-ish.
Yeah, like I get the Bruce Wayne persona, because I know there are listeners out there. They're going to email us and say, "Oh, well, it's Bruce Wayne being Bruce Wayne, you know, or it's Bruce being Bruce Wayne. I need to put up appearances and, you know, flirt with Veronica Vreeland." But you got to think that if he's dating Veronica Vreeland, that's a relationship that is completely fictitious. I mean, there's no chance that Bruce is into Veronica. So he's only doing it for appearances, which kind of makes him an awful human being. Secondly,
well, maybe she's doing it for appearances too.
Well,
it's like a celebrity,
but we already know that Veronica's a horrible human being. We've seen her, like, you know, make fun of the Penguin and you know, create an entire soiree around him, making him a joke. But I'm wondering about Bruce hanging out with Veronica. Like, to me, that just seems weird. But Harley comes across the two of them, and Bruce. This is where it gets strange for me. Bruce seems to legitimately be rooting for Harley. Like, he's got this sort of look in his eyes, and he seems very friendly. It's not like a sort of, you know, whatever. It's more of a, you know, oh, hi there, I'm rooting for you, sort of, you know, sort of thing. I realize that he can't be Batman in this moment, but he's not being the super vigilant Bruce that we're accustoed to seeing in this moment.
Guy who was in the tree outside of Poison Ivy's house with the binoculars.
That's what I'm saying. Is he is not that guy. He is not the person who is, instead of being outside of Harley Quinn's tree or house in a tree, he is shopping with Veronica Vreeland. Like, somehow or another, he sees Harley as being different.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So normally, normally he would be Batman. He would be dressed as Batman. Normally he would be dressed as Batman, following her around.
No matter where she was, he would be there as Batman with some binoculars in a tree, staring her down. But instead, he is hanging out with Veronica Vreeland in a store that he had no idea Harley was ever going to walk into, because they were already in the store when Harley walks in. So this to me is weird a little bit.
Okay, so going back, do you think the hand holding in the beginning of this episode between Batman and Harley was, I believe in you, don't F this up?
No, I think, well, maybe
it was like a gentle warning, like, I actually think you can do this. You need to be careful. This is a warning to you.
Maybe,
but I believe you.
But she didn't even take it that way. Let me play you this clip of her response to Batman holding her hand for a little too long.
I'll show you. Starting tomorrow, you'll see I am just as sane as anybody.
This could also be a result of the two of them having teamed up, if you remember correctly. In one episode, you know, she was kind of his partner. Now she was a bit on, you know, by the end, she was sort of going up against Batman, you know, to some degree. But there was some good there. He could definitely see the two of them were partnering up. Okay, I'm willing to go on that limb. Harley then buys this dress legitimately and is so excited she leaves without the security tag having been taken off. The security guard tries to stop her.
Hey, what's the deal?
Hold it.
I didn't do anything.
That's a security alarm. Just give me back
The security guard treats her as if she stole the dress, even though by the time she flips out, he then is like, no, I just want to take her, you know, but by that point, he has already approached her in a very like, I'm a security guard sort of way, which I wouldn't say is the best way to do it. She flips out. She goes into the dressing room, and this to me, Drea, is where I want to sort of direct your attention. She comes out of the dressing room wearing the classic Harley Quinn outfit, including the face paint and all of the, you know, the whole 9 yards. That means she walked into that store with this outfit like in her purse. I have to ask you, as a clinical psychologist, if you are in fact red stamped sane, she to me seemed like she had an itchy trigger finger, like she wanted to go back to Harley a little.
Only because you're saying this because she had the costume in her purse.
It was like she was looking for an excuse.
I mean, it was that cartoon moment where she goes into the dressing room and then moments later
she's a different person.
She comes out with the full-on makeup and that. Like there's something kind of dramatic about it. But part of me feels like, again, she's so defined by her outward appearance that her persona, her self-esteem, her actions, everything is kind of directed and defined by what she looks like on the outside. That is kind of her identity, unfortunately. So when she got upset, she's accused of stealing. She's treated, or she perceives the treatment as being not just accusatory, but I don't know, there's something like she feels debased, or she feels like she's being treated like a criminal.
Yeah.
And so that moment is, I've been rehabilitated, I've been assessed, I've been determined to be sane,
but
and yet I am being treated like a criminal. Therefore, I will show you criminal. Like, I will act like a criminal. And we've talked about this before in previous episodes when we've explored Killer Croc trying to recover, Two-Face, other characters where they make an attempt to integrate into society, but they continue to be treated poorly. And so I'm not saying that that I don't question that, because I also wonder why she's carrying that around.
But she's not just carrying the outfit around. I mean, the thing about Killer Croc, the thing about Penguin, the thing about not Two-Face, but like Riddler, and not even Riddler, because the whole thing was a scam. But the thing about Penguin and the thing about Killer Croc was, it wasn't until Batman chased them and like sort of almost forced them back into that lifestyle, because Penguin legitimately wanted to be on the up and up. Like he came out wanting to be a good guy, or at least part of the societal elite. And Batman was sort of not willing to let that happen. And more to the point, Veronica Vreeland and her like man servant wouldn't let that happen. But Penguin didn't have like, this would be like a criminal being let out of prison and saying, look, I'm a good guy now. I'm never going to do anything bad again. I'm never going to rob another bank. I'm never going to kill another person. I'm never going to do another drug. I'm never going to do, I'm never going to do anything bad. But I'm going to carry this gun just in case someone thinks I'm bad, because then I'm going to start shooting things. And that's what Harley does. She's got the weapon. And I'm not just talking about the outfit. She takes out the big pistol with the cork and like she takes Veronica Vreeland hostage and throws her into her car and steals the car.
I'm not excusing that behavior. I clearly I think that was quite drastic and that it was out of control. Like clearly she could have handled that situation differently. Her interpretation of the event was inaccurate. Her perception was skewed. Her, like a psychologist would say, like her cognitive appraisal was, an error. Like this was not her reality. I'm not saying she was having a break from reality. I'm saying her interpretation of the situation was that this was escalating and that she was being accused of a crime.
So let's go back to one of the previous things that you've said about Harley in an episode a while back. And I should make it very clear, you never diagnosed her with anything at this point. You had not seen her enough to do any sort of diagnosis. But you did lean at one point, or you did mention borderline when it came to Harley because of her perceptions of relationships that weren't necessarily accurate.
Right. That was in the context of her relationship with the Joker.
So it's possible that her perception of the events that are taking place are also inaccurate? Could that also be?
We could certainly talk about some of those traits that we in previous episodes have said are consistent with someone who has borderline personality disorder. But here, what I'm talking about is simply the appraisal of the evidence around her. Like the way that she perceives the world is, it's really interesting. Moments ago, she was sort of thinking that the folks around her were just judging her outfit, which was a complete misunderstanding of what was happening. They were scared of her. They were legitimately scared of her. And then here we have a situation where she perceives the folks around her as threatening her and accusing her. And, again, just creating this villain out of her. And I think that what's happening, why she has the weapon, why she has the costume, is that there could be this history that has led to needing to have that around her. Like if she has lived a life where things do get out of hand, people do threaten her, things do get out of control or whatever, then I guess the need to have something like a weapon or some way to get out of a bad situation, that would make sense to me. And it's not as if she has complete lack of confidence in herself. It could be that idea of, I can't predict the world around me. I might get in a bad spot. It may not be my fault. But remember, she comes from a society, she comes from a group, a gang of people, a relationship where people do bad things and someone might try to do something bad to her. So for that reason, I don't necessarily dislike the fact that she had her costume and her weapon on her.
But you also don't dislike the fact that Arkham Asylum will give Poison Ivy a potted plant in her. Veronica's father, who's a general, has heard that Veronica has been kidnapped.
I want action, Gordon, not excuses. My daughter's in danger. I need SWAT teams, helicopters, full military backup.
This is so random. We've never seen him before.
We've never seen him, and I'm pretty sure, having had a father who was career military, I don't care who you are, you can't just take a tank and go driving through the streets of Gotham City. There's something wrong with him at this, he's
very worried about Veronica.
By the way, how is Veronica a socialite with this much money if her father is just an army general? Like I've seen their sorts of paychecks. He would have to be really high up in order to be any kind of socialite.
Maybe her mother has
maybe
a high-paying job, or they have old money.
Maybe. Oh, yeah. Maybe he does it because he just likes the tanks. Harley takes Veronica to the one person she thinks might be able to take Veronica off her hands, and that's Boxy Bennett. He can make a pretty penny off of her, and but he doesn't really get the opportunity because then Batman and Robin end up showing up. A fight takes place, and Harley is stuck in the middle. Once again, she ends up grabbing Veronica Vreeland, and they get back into the car and end up taking off. And you're just like, she's not helping herself, and she knows it. That's the beauty of this.
Can't you explain that it was all just a mistake? With my past? I don't even believe it myself.
But, I mean, remember what we've talked about in the past, like, you cannot help but be who you are. I'm not saying she cannot help but be a criminal. I'm saying her history, her experiences are kind of like this. Like, you know, again, threatening environments, unpredictable, you know, violence, impulsivity. You don't plan ahead. You don't have resourceful ways to strategize. It's just, oh crap, I'm in a dangerous situation again. What do? I grab and go. Yeah. You know, so it's very impulsive. It's very emotional. It's not like she doesn't have the executive functioning skills that most people would have to really handle these things, or what I would say the practice, the social skills or the practice to know that you can get out of situations through other types of problem solving. Right. So I kind of get it. I could totally see this happening. So I should say that I jumped ahead ever so slightly in my excitement about talking about General Vreeland. That this is the point in which the tanks show up. Like up to this point, the general has learned from Commissioner Gordon that Veronica was kidnapped, blah, 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 blah. The exciting part is that, you know, at this point, General Vreeland brings the tanks and tries to destroy Gotham City. And this entire car chase ends with this catastrophic sort of a crash between all of the different people involved. Harvey, General Vreeland is landing on cars. I mean, you know, like Vreeland thinks he's killed everybody, basically. And we find out that Harley has actually saved Veronica Vreeland. She gets Veronica to safety and then begins the classic Batman chase, where he is then pleading with Harley to not mess this up.
Listen to me. All the work you've done, your freedom. If you run away, you'll lose them, Harley. You're so close to winning back your real life. Why risk it now?
My mind is blown, Drea, because frankly, this is not the Batman that we have known for the last 80 some odd episodes.
Are you saying that typically he would try to arrest her?
He's throwing batarangs. He's using bat launchers of different, like, this is the kind of thing Batman would expect Harley Quinn to do. Except in this episode, he's like on her tail and basically saying like, no, don't mess this up. Don't. Look, I'm going to end up taking you back, but you're not going to be there for very long. Like, look, just chill out. Like, and that's not the Batman we've known. He's always been like more sort of gloaty, like, I knew you couldn't do it. I mean, just think about what he said to Riddler. I mean, granted, he was right about Riddler, but he didn't know that he was right about Riddler. He was only going off a hunch. And he goes up to Riddler in that last episode and he says, you might have all these other people fooled, but you'll never fool me. I know for a fact that I'm going to be the one to take you down. Like, that's the kind of thing he says to these people, but he doesn't say it to Harley.
No, in fact, he tells her that she could still, like, it's that idea that she still has a chance. And I think he truly believes it. I
Yeah.
think that he believes she is close enough to recovery that she could actually get better.
Yeah.
And you're right. I don't think we see him. It's rare. I don't think we see him really express that with the other villains.
Right.
Okay, something about him reaching out to her triggered her. Like, that did not work. She actually, I would say she escalates.
I'm having a bad day. I'm sick of people trying to shoot me, run me over, and blow me up.
And Batman does say later,
I know what it's like to try and rebuild a life. I had a bad day too, once.
I have to know, because I know that you're a fan of this particular story. Am I crazy in thinking that that might have in some way been an allusion to Killing Joke? Because there's that moment where Joker says all it takes to turn someone bad, or all it takes is one bad day, and even says you must have had a day like that too. Like there's this moment in the Killing Joke where he, you know, actually says, you know, surely that must have happened to you one day.
Yeah,
you know.
I did wonder what day Batman was talking.
Oh, he's talking about the parents. He's always talking about the
well,
parents.
that's the thing. Like, is he talking about the loss of his parents?
Oh, yeah.
Or is he talking about kind of in general, like,
No.
the world craps on me too?
Batman doesn't even think about any day other than the day that his parents died. I'm convinced he has no memory of any day
But
since
I mean,
then.
I think we shouldn't gloss over this empathic moment. Like, this is development for him.
Sure.
Because he's basically telling a villain, I know what it's like to be in that moment. I know what it's like to want to just give up because the world has you know, handed you this hand.
Yeah, and I don't want to gloss over this. This is what I'm talking about. This is something we've not seen in 80 some odd episodes. Like, he has not had this empathic moment before. He's always been dead certain of his particular, like, that. It's like you've said, that black and white stance, and I'm going to be right. I can't trust them to be good. I can't do that, you know.
And certainly I think too it would destroy him to think that he's anything like any of these criminals, because in his mind he's different than they are. They take measures that he won't take. They're insane, and he's not. Like, he has developed these huge walls between them.
Mm-hmm.
So to say, no, I know what that's like, I think he's also saying, and I think you can be a good person, because I think he thinks, you know, he's had his moments, but I think ultimately he does think he's a good person.
Do you think he knows something about Harley that we, the audience, don't know yet? Because when you think about it, because we're not allowed to discuss anything we haven't seen, technically we don't know certain things about her past yet. But do you think Batman sees good in who she was and who she could be again, and, you know, whatever? Like, do you think that's the difference?
I think he sees I think he sees who she is now. I think he was moved by her action to save Veronica.
Yeah.
I think that he had seen sides of her in the store. Like, I think this episode,
her legitimate excitement to be good.
I think this episode alone gave him some hope and insight into her recovery. And interesting, I mean, it goes even further. He gives her the dress that she tried to buy.
Yeah.
Who
took the security tag?
He did. He bought it. I think he bought another one. I don't know what happened. He's Batman. He ended up getting that one and gives it to her. I've never seen him give any, like, he is not a gift giver. This is a huge moment.
This is what I'm saying. This is why I'm saying that it's like they flipped a switch. Batman is different in this moment, and I think it's interesting that comes on the heels of a Two-Face episode where Two-Face is very different from how he had been presented. Like, have you noticed how many episodes leading up to this one have all been about reforming the villains? Like, it's almost like they see the end coming, because this is toward the end of the Batman the Animated Series run. It's almost like they were like, we got to heal everybody. And Batman's got to become a softie. Like, Batman's got to become like a good guy at this point. Like, he can't...
We can't end the show with him being a complete D-bag.
Yeah, like, he can't not trust everybody, you know.
Well, but the dress... So, the dress is interesting because when a man gives you a dress, like, that gift is an intimate... you know, it's a very personal gift.
Let's talk about that personal gift, because he gives her the dress. He takes her back to Arkham. And I think it's interesting that her doctor, Dr. Leland, basically says, look, I don't think you're going to be here for very long. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Did you not just realize that you misjudged this situation?
No, I actually liked that.
What?
I was really respectful of that, because I thought it was kind of a gesture toward understanding that people don't just recover in one step, that there's this idea, and this is actually true in mental health treatment. Like, some people do undergo a series of one intervention, a series of sessions, and they recover, or they do quite well, and they may not go back.
Okay, but I'm not a doctor. I wouldn't let that person out into the world and then, knowing that they would come back for more treatment.
No,
like,
that's not what I'm saying.
This person said, you're sane, and let them go.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there was this clearly there was a need to provide more support and solution building and skill building and all that. And the idea for me, it wasn't that the doctor was like, well, I don't know what's going to happen to you. I'm just going to say you're saying goodbye. I think it was more like, we believed that you were ready, and we're human. We all made an error. It's fine. And we have hope. We have hope,
Sure.
and you are resilient, and we're going to build some more skills. We're going to work a little bit more, and you're not going to be here for that much longer, because we are going to work together to provide you another opportunity to reintegrate into society and try this again, which is a kind of very meaningful message about mental health treatment.
So what you're saying is, when she says she doesn't think she'll be there long, it's a relative term. Like, it could still be years, but we think you've got hope. Because I would have to say, as a psychologist, if I were one, and I had gone to the trouble of taking a stamp and putting some red ink on it and just slamming it down on a thing that says you're sane, and then letting you go, and then the day later, Batman's bringing you back being like, she wasn't quite ready. And then you're like, oh, but I still think you're pretty close. But
you are the expert, so you would know. I mean, I think that actually makes sense.
Okay.
Like, yeah, there were efforts there. She slipped up. And this is where we would make the distinction between like a full-on relapse or episode and a moment, a vulnerable moment, or a return of some symptoms, or whatever you want to say, that there's this idea that no one's perfect, and that despite everyone's effort to work toward, recovery, unfortunately, there was an incident. There were a series of incidents, right? So more work needs to be done. And I don't think that was meant to be like, oh, we never should have let her out to begin with. That was, she tried, and we're going to help her to get back out there again.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that it's important to always show positivity, to always show hope.
Right. But I think we're also muddying up criminality and mental health, symptoms, that gets kind of intertwined. And so what are we really talking about here? Are we saying she committed a crime and therefore needs to go back to jail?
I need to make it very clear that I'm not referring to her sanity per se, but she happens to be locked up in Arkham Asylum, which means some judge somewhere decided she's not simply a criminal, she is criminally insane. And that, to me, I think may just be, not necessarily laziness on the part of a writer, but it's a convenience like, oh, you're back. And,
right.
I think there's something to be said about that.
My interpretation of this was, you're not here to be punished because you committed a crime. Mm-hmm. You're here for rehabilitation.
Right.
And we're teaming up, we're collaborating with you to ensure that you get another chance. So the criminality piece I'm setting aside for now. And some aspects of her treatment are in alignment with what's called the recovery-oriented model, or recovery-oriented practice, which in mental health means that we're focusing less on like the particular symptoms of a diagnosis and what, the DSM would consider what she needs to do to get better, and her own definition of what wellness is. So it's taking the intervention and the recovery at the level of working with the person.
Right.
So the person defines, what is recovery to them? Like, what does that look like to her? Does it mean I get to walk down the street and go shopping and just live my life? Like, people don't tell me what to do. Well, fine. Does that mean you're not going to commit crimes anymore? Does that mean that you'll have healthy relationships? Does that mean that you'll be able to hold a job? Of course we need to be realistic here, but she defines what it means to be living with this, whatever diagnosis she's given. Mm-hmm. So it focuses less on a diagnosis. It focuses, it moves away from pathology models and toward a more collaborative model with the person who's living with that disorder, which is actually much more respectful and comes with much more dignity than some of the more like disease-oriented models. Mm-hmm. So according to the APA, the American Psychological Association, recovery-oriented practice would put much more focus on self-direction, so the patient making decisions about recovery and goals, being very person-centered, being very strength-based, so working less with like checklists of symptoms, but more about like what are the person's strengths and some positive things about their functioning and their resilience. Mm-hmm. Having peer support, so understanding what's helpful in their community from their social relationships, their families, and so forth. A huge amount of respect and acceptance. And that has to do also with the community around them. So we in our society talk a lot about like living with depression, living with anxiety, living with schizophrenia, what does that look like? And part of our aim to be responsible and treat people with dignity as a society, I think, is to also understand that a person is not defined by those symptoms of depression, anxiety, schizophrenia, etc., that a person is defined by many more things, and they happen to be living with that.
Right.
So again, it's a more kind of holistic, very respectful, empowered way to approach mental health. And I think the way in which Harley is treated is very similar to that.
So let's talk about the last couple of minutes of this episode, because we talked about the fact that Batman gives her the dress. We talked about the fact that he talks about the one bad day that he once had. But then, taken in by all this, Harley then kisses him, decides she likes it, kisses him again. Everyone else is like, oh, that's kind of weird.
There's so many people watching them.
Yeah. And she gives him like a pretty lengthy kiss on the lips.
Right. So Robin's there and watches. Veronica's there?
No.
Who else? It's just
the.
Oh no, Poison Ivy.
Yeah.
Poison Ivy is like holding her plant and watching
Poison Ivy's
them.
holding the plant that'll ultimately be her downfall the day after she gets released from Arkham Asylum. And the doctor. So Dr. Leland as well. And they are sitting there watching as Harley kisses Batman, and Batman's eyes even go all like googly big. Whoa.
He's surprised. I don't think that's enjoyment. I think
no, I'm not saying it's enjoyment. It's definitely a surprise. And she walks away. She sees Ivy, the two of them have had these moments together where they had an entire episode where they were like together as partners, on this crime spree, and she says,
What are you looking at?
So Drea, this leads into a question that an Arkham Sessions listener sent us. And I love this question, and I'm wondering if you can talk about it. This is from Ivy. I'm not kidding.
What?
It's from Ivy. And she says, does Harley Quinn tend more toward hybristophilia? So it almost explains the kiss at the end of this episode as well. For starters, for the listeners, Drea, what in the world is hybristophilia?
Okay. This is not a common term, nor is it a common trait.
Okay.
Okay, so hybristophilia happens to be a paraphilia. A paraphilia, as defined in the DSM, is a sexual problem where the sexual arousal is in response to situations, objects, or stimuli not typically associated with normal patterns of sexual behavior and development. So there's this kind of deviant, abnormal kind of behavior that is linked to that person's sexuality. As you can imagine, voyeurism, masochism, sadism, those are more commonly known types of paraphilias. And I want to be very clear to explain that they're listed as paraphilias in that not only is the behavior preferred by that individual, but it typically causes some kind of interference with their functioning.
So we're not talking about someone who simply has a particular preference. It's someone who is deeply affected by this preference. It's someone...
Yes.
Yeah.
And typically, the ones listed also... they impact other people, right? So they either violate or involve people who are not consenting. Like there's that aspect of other people might be negatively impacted by these particular disorders. So there's a list of paraphilias if folks want to look them up in the DSM. Again, not typically commonplace.
Sure.
Some, of course, are more common than others. And I do want to say that just because it's in the DSM doesn't necessarily mean that it is, a condition that is defined well. That this is an area that clearly needs more research and much more work to really fully flesh out what those characteristics are. Sexual preference, sexual behaviors, simply because they're historically not defined as normal does not necessarily make them a disorder.
Right. It only becomes a disorder when it starts to negatively affect your life and all that. Yeah.
Hybristophilia has been defined as a particular paraphilia in which a person is aroused and gets pleasure from having a partner who is known to have committed an outrage or crime, like violence, rape, murder, armed robbery.
So you're talking about like you're talking about like the people who send like
yes, I know where you're going.
Fan mail to Charles Manson.
Yes, people who want to marry Charles Manson, Jeffrey Dahmer, Richard Ramirez, Ted Bundy. All of the serial killers who have been incarcerated have had these loyal, devoted, I don't know, adoring fans. Many of them are women who truly are not just making up like, this fantasy. They believe that they love them and are attracted to them.
Right.
And so there's been some literature around this where researchers and psychologists are kind of conceptualizing this as a particular type of sexual preference. Like there are women out there who will, really only feel fulfilled if they're paired up with someone who is dangerous, who is potentially a criminal, who has killed other people.
Yeah, which makes sense that Harley is so keen on the Joker, even when he is so abusive to her as to kick her out of her house and do all this. Like, she comes back to him because he is the worst of the worst. He's a bad dude. And in the case of the end of this episode, she ends up kissing Batman because he gave her a gift. But also, Batman's kind of a bad dude. Like, I imagine she could be sending him fan mail if she only knew where to send it.
Well, and remember her origins.
Oh, but we can't talk about that. We're not allowed to talk about the origins.
Well, so we know that she's been involved with the Joker, and so you might have enough evidence here. You know, Batman, the Joker, Poison Ivy, whether it was romantic or not, it was a close relationship. Sure. So she is drawn toward people who are potentially dangerous, unpredictable.
Can I ask you a question? As the psychologist, like, I've heard of something in the past, and I just want to see if it's this. Is hybristophilia what some people, like, I guess us lay people, know as Bonnie and Clyde syndrome? Like, is that where the two of them, I know that they were basically saying that the two of them sort of got off on this lifestyle of crime and bank robbery, and they were in love with one another, and
But I just sort of I just see that as people who are thrill seekers. Like, they would score high on the trait of thrill seeking, or sensation seeking. They're risk takers. There are some people that are more likely to engage in that, and if they enjoy the company of other people who are like that, then you might have that kind of situation. I don't know that I would create this label of considering it like a paraphilia. To me, doesn't seem necessary. Right. I think about Harley, and I think that it is more or less a part of her overall personality, a pretty complex cluster of traits. And yes, she is more impulsive. She's sensation seeking. She is not comfortable just kind of sitting around. She wants to be in risky situations. That's how she feels good. That's how she knows she's alive. I don't necessarily think that it's a purely sexual thing, if that makes sense.
Oh, that makes sense. So, Drea, ultimately, what did you think of this episode? Did you like it?
I did. I liked the ending. It's uncomfortable because we see Harley develop a bit. Like, she wants to be a good person. She says many times in different ways that she wants to be normal. She just wants to be treated like a normal person. And I think that's likable about her. But then the relationship with Batman is kind of interesting because she also gives him this attention that he doesn't feel comfortable with. And so we see him, I don't know, we see him kind of struggle. Like, he doesn't like that. He doesn't like her, and he doesn't like that like physical attention that she gives him. Right.
He's very uncomfortable.
And I don't know why. I think it just adds more layers to him. Like, I think he was I think he just wanted to be kind and give her the dress and
a little encouragement.
And just like let it be. And she kind of took it too far.
Like she does. I liked it. I thought it was an interesting episode, but it blew my mind on so many levels. I don't know where these characters stand anymore. And frankly, I'm excited to see where they end up going, because at this point, if there's a turning point in the series and where the characters were versus where they are and where they're going, I would say that the last 2 or 3 episodes would be that turning point. And I don't know, we might be seeing an actual evolution of these characters, which is exciting to me. that brings me to our next episode, the one that you'll be able to hear next week, which is Lock Up. Another story by Paul Dini, not written by, but a story by. That one's going to be written by Marty Eisenberg and Bob Skur. So it's actually going to be a great episode. I can tell just from those three names being put together. Until next week, Drea, why don't you tell the folks where they can find you?
On Twitter, I'm at Arkham Asylum Doc, and my website is underthemaskonline.com.
And you can find me. I am on Twitter. I am at bward028. You can follow us both on Twitter. We are at Arkham Sessions. And, of course, you should go follow our good friends over at Fanbase Press. That is their new name. If you were following Fanboy Comics before, you don't have to follow anyone else. They automatically changed it. You are still following at Fanbase Press, and if you're not following them already, you absolutely should be, because all the news that you're going to need is right there. All the cool podcasts that you're going to need is right there, and they've also got great comic books of their own that are right there. You should go check them out at Fanbase Press. And you should go to IMSI and communicate with us there. There's an entire community just waiting for you to participate. It is imzy.com. That's imzy.com/Arkham. Until next week, I am Brian Ward.
I'm Dr. Andrea Letamendi.
And together we are
The Arkham Sessions.
Call me